Welcome back. Another episode of Sets and Reps. I'm Greg Gadonian. It's good to have you here. We're talking to Dan Rousseau, who ended up working at my health club in Milford, New Hampshire, part-time, and he formerly worked with the Tampa Bay Rays as their strength and conditioning coach. So I get to sit down and chat with him, which is pretty special for me because even though I'm currently slated to become a physical therapist assistant, part of me wants to get certified to help condition athletes and prepare them for their season in whatever ways that they need. So I was really able to sit down with him and talk to him about, how he got that certification, what it required, what kind of traveling he had to do, how much time he actually spent programming with athletes, and just different locations that he was able to go to, things that he liked and disliked about the program. So it was really cool to sit down with someone who actually did the job, because a lot of times people don't really know too much about this profession and what are some of the responsibilities that they have. Before we get into that episode, I want to also introduce a new segment that I'm going to be doing at the end of each of my intros. And this is a segment I like to call circuit training. Now, I need your guys' help with this segment because today, the topic that I picked is something that I chose. But for each segment of circuit training, I want you guys to send me an email at setsandrepspod@gmail.com. And I want you to give me one brief concept about fitness, about nutrition, something along the lines of something that you're doing at the gym that maybe you have a question about. Anything that I can answer and explain for you, because basically that's what circuit training is going to be. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to talk about muscle imbalances. When someone's speaking about a muscle imbalance, they're usually talking about two things. They're either talking about whether one muscle is overactive or working harder than the other one. And a lot of times that could be on the dominant side. For example, if you're right-handed, you do a lot of motions with your right arm, your right bicep might be bigger than your left one or stronger than your left one. Another thing that they may be talking about for muscle imbalance is whether or not one side is tight and you have a lot of pain on that side, and that really limits your motion. So it could be that one side is working harder, just more active, and it could be the other side has a lot of pain and a lot of tightness. Why is this an issue? So if this is left unchecked, you could, if you're experiencing pain, you could be having more pain. You could make your situation a whole lot worse than it actually is. And if you're someone who's a bodybuilder and you're big into your physique and what you look like symmetrically or proportionally, if you got an imbalance in one bicep, for example, or one side of your deltoid is bigger than the other one, it's going to throw you off and you may not feel unhappy about it. So what I want to talk about is how you can fix that. Well, what are some ways to work on these imbalances? So one of the simplest answers, especially for the one side that's working harder or the muscle that's more active, you're going to want to just push a few extra reps on that one side that's weaker. Sounds kind of simple, but personally, for myself, it has worked the best for me. And when I say this, I mean plainly, for example, if you are on a muscular hypertrophy program or you're trying to increase the size of the muscle, you're going to want to do about 8 to 10 reps on the side that is stronger or more dominant. And on the other side that's weaker, you want to push it a little bit harder. So you want to do 12 reps on that side, 12 to 15. Give it a try. All right. Sorry, screen's shaking. So the second thing that I would recommend you do is talk to a personal trainer or a physical therapist, especially if you have something that's just constantly giving you nagging pain and you really want to know why it's doing that. And a lot of people may not have access to these resources. So what I did was I am providing two websites that come from individuals in the fitness industry, the movement industry that I trust and that I research from all the time. As a coach and as a trainer myself, I get inspiration from those who have gone before me, who know a lot more than me, and I learn from them and help impart it to others. So one website you're going to want to go to if you have pain, for example, in your shoulder or your lower back, and you want to know what's wrong with it, you want to know how you maybe can fix it, go to squatuniversity.com. Check out the articles and information provided by Dr. Aaron Horschig, physical therapist and Olympic weightlifter. He provides self-screens that you can do on yourself, tests to see what kind of movements trigger your pain, and ways that you can fix it. So another website you're going to want to visit as well is drjohnrosen.com. John is also a physical therapist, but he's a certified in strength and conditioning, and he has tons of articles about different ways that you can train your muscles innovatively, maybe in ways that you hadn't thought of before. And again, if you just type in what kind of issue you're dealing with into that search bar, you will find tons of different information and resources for you. So again, that was circuit training, this little intro segment. Let me know what you think. Also, shoot me an email at sessionsrepspod@gmail.com for the next topic you want to hear about in circuit training. And if you do that, I will give you a shout out in that introduction. I'll say who let me know the question that they want to talk about. So I'm going to slide on out of here and let you get right into this episode. Peace. Rousseau, I'd like to start off by giving him a warm welcome. How are you today, sir? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling all right today. Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Well. Glad to hear. I'm pretty excited for this episode. Looking forward to it. I started this podcast so that I could not only appreciate and continue to appreciate the things that I know and love, but I also want to learn about some things that maybe I don't know so much about. So that's part of the reason why we came here today. For our sports fans and our baseball fans in particular, this might be a really exciting episode for you. So you have some experience working with a professional team. Is that correct? Can you tell us what team that you worked for?
Yes, I worked for the Tampa Bay Rays, professional baseball organization.
Awesome.
And I worked in their player development, working mostly with minor leaguers, but also worked with major leaguers also.
Okay. And what I would like to do in the future, my personal career, I want to be a certified strength and conditioning coach. That's what you were, right?
Yes. Yeah. That is through the National Strength and Conditioning Association, or NSCA, and they call it CSCS. That stands for Certified Strength and Conditioning Coach.
That's awesome. For our listeners who maybe don't know what a certified strength and conditioning specialist does, or their job description, could you give us a few facts? Could you tell us what are some of the responsibilities of a strength and conditioning coach?
Well, basically it's I don't want to say they're a jack of all trades, but you really need to know a lot. You got to really know how the human body works, anatomy, physiological systems, and a lot of times people think when they think they often say strength coach, but they leave out the conditioning part, because that's what most people relate to, is like working with weights in the weight room, but conditioning aspect really obviously is pretty broad in itself, refers to running or any kind of conditioning, whether it's cycling or so it's all part of that gamut. But as a strength and conditioning coach, you basically it's geared towards training athletes, and so that is what the I don't want to say the NSCA has a niche, but that's basically what they created for themselves. So that is why sometimes you will see a lot of people that work in sports, not just professionally, but collegiate level, high school level, who have that CSCS certification. And it's generally one of the harder ones to get because they make it a little more difficult to obtain. You have to put some time into it. And you do need a 4-year degree, which for some people that is the only thing holding them back. But they do have a certified personal training certification that is, I think it might only require a 2-year degree. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, like a
CPT
2-year, or maybe GE. Maybe they require a GED. I'm familiar.
Yeah. I forget what but
for my certification, it required a GED.
okay.
I took the 2-year exercise science associates, maybe potentially finishing my exercise science bachelor's so that I can get the CSCS there. But yeah, just most likely it was a GED. But you're saying that they have their personal trainer certification, which is not as hard to get as the CSCS.
I think the requirements are. I don't honestly. I mean, I just got the CSCS, and some people get both, and I don't really see the need to get both. And honestly, I can't give you an honest answer as to differences between the two. But I do believe sometimes people will start with the CPT, personal training, and that would be geared more towards if you were working maybe in a health club or at the general population versus teams, sports teams and athletes.
Yeah, that's my goal. That's my route right now. I mean, being a trainer myself, I talk about it a lot on the show, but it's what I'm passionate about. So that's kind of where I'm starting off, health club, gym setting, and then I want to maybe specialize later on with athletes. And so that's why I'm really honored to have you on the podcast and talk about your experience. So thank you again. So can you take me back to when you first started? What year did you start working with the Tampa Bay Rays?
2007.
Okay. Can you walk me through the process of like how you got that job?
Yeah, actually it was it's kind of funny how I did it. I was working at the YMCA in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I was working there full time, doing a lot of personal training, training a lot of athletes. And I basically I started working at the Y part-time, but after getting certified in strength and conditioning, I wanted to get more experience. And the only way for me to do that was to really take a leap of faith and go work there full-time. And that way there I could jump right into it and I could design programs for, athletes of all abilities, different sports and whatnot. And then I did I did a summer of training at a place called Top Fitness in Nashua. So, but around that time, I probably was at the Y full-time, maybe 3 years, a little more than 3 years, where I realized it was time for me to maybe do something else. I was working paycheck to paycheck. And so anyways, I think it was around October, November of 2006. I was going to the NSCA website. They have a career job postings. I noticed Major League Baseball had a lot of job openings for minor league strength and conditioning coaches that they were structuring as an intern. And I thought, man, that'd be kind of cool. I like baseball. So I just really got my resume together and it was easy to apply. You could apply right through the NSCA website, just it's very simple. I just kept going. Like all these teams were coming up. Like I probably applied to like 12 or 15 teams.
Oh, wow.
And only a couple of them got back to me saying they weren't hiring. So I kind of forgot about it. But it was funny. I should say this about the Rays. Back then they were called the Devil Rays.
Yeah.
And they were always a last place team. And they were the last team I even applied to because I just kind of got sick of sending out, when you're looking for jobs and you're not sure if you're just kind of doing it on a whim and, it's kind of like a far reach. So you're just sending out all these applications and you're not hearing anything. And so I almost gave up. I'm like, Devil Rays. Nobody likes the Devil Rays. But it's like, let's just get one more application out there. So that was around, November of 2006. Meanwhile, I was thinking about going to get a master's degree in strength and conditioning. I applied to Springfield College. I went down there for an interview. I got accepted into their program around, December or January. But I got a phone call out of the blue sometime, I think it was January 12th, 2007, from Tampa Bay and asking me if I was, they interviewed me. They weren't offering me the job right away, but they basically interviewed me and they're basically screening me, and they gave me like 24 hours to call them back if I was interested. And then I called the guy back the next day. He goes, "Oh yeah, a lot of people don't call me back when they realize like you have to do drug tests and all that stuff. That kind of scares some people away." But so it's like, so
Wow.
I went through his phone interview, and then I got hired shortly after. And then before, I was scrambling to get my stuff, ready and I headed down to Florida. At the time, their spring training site was in St. Petersburg, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and I went in a little earlier than the minor leaguers, because I got to spend some time with the big league players in big league camp. So it was really a good experience for me. Yeah, to be able to do that.
You mentioned briefly, I just want to go back a little bit. You mentioned there's a master's in strength and conditioning degree that you can get. Do you know by any chance what the difference between that and just getting certified after a 4-year degree?
Well, anytime you get a master's degree, you have to, obviously do some research and have a master's thesis, and
Hmm.
so it just carries a little more weight. Well, yeah, I'm glad you bring that up, because I was pretty much dead set on going to Springfield College. I got accepted to their program. I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I could start that in the fall. But my boss, who I was working with, was a pretty knowledgeable guy, and he's like, Dan, getting a master's degree in strength and conditioning really doesn't put you that much ahead of anybody else,
Mm.
because you don't really have a license. It may give you a better advantage over somebody else when it comes to hiring, but you really don't need it. He said you should probably go into physical therapy, because then you know, you can sign off on patients, and you can still do training if you wanted to and things like that. So um, it kind of got me thinking a lot, and I ended up not going to Springfield College for the master's degree, and then
Mm.
so which meant that I was going to stay in baseball another year, because I had to do some research on going to physical therapy school. So I started looking into that,
Very cool.
which I ended up doing. I ended up going to physical therapy school, get accepted. It was kind of a long story. I had been out of school for such a long time that
Mm.
the course, I was doing well with the courses, but it was so much information was being thrown at me that I unfortunately wasn't able to finish the program, but I did learn a lot while I was in there.
I'm
Because
going through it. Yeah, I'm going through it right now, like part of it, and it is a ton of information.
yeah,
Um,
if you hadn't been in school, like I hadn't been in school, probably it was like 17 or 18 years since I, was actually in a college, when I got my bachelor's degree. So a lot of times those PT schools will make you take courses over if you've been out of school like 5 or 10 years. And the school that I was going to at the time didn't require that, which for me, I probably should have taken some prerequisites just to get me back into that, swing of things. But it is what it is. I learned a lot in physical therapy, and then I went back in baseball, 2012.
okay.
So
All right. So when you worked with the team, you said you were with the minor leagues for a while and you were with the major leagues for a while. What was the differentiation there? I'm coming from a perspective where I don't know too much about how the teams and how the leagues the teams break down within the leagues. So where did you
okay,
spend most of your time?
well, honestly, when I say major league, is a lot of people think there's this vast difference between majors and minors, which there is, but you're all working together in spring training. I mean, spring training, where we use the same facilities, the same weight room, the same athletic training room, we use the same baseball fields. We're just not on there at the same time, but we are crossing paths, and you constantly have like minor leaguers that are going up and playing in spring training games. Usually, it's split squads, and then like when I said I went down there for spring training, I got to go
Mm.
down for big league camp, which means I just got to go a little bit early and work with the major leaguers until minor leaguers came in like a couple weeks later. So, but yeah, a lot of people really think there's this, you know, big difference between majors and minors. I mean, which there is on a skill level, but they're still professional athletes, and you got guys that are in rookie ball who can throw 95 miles per hour, and even but they're not in the big leagues. So it's just it's just a long process of refining their talent if they ever make it to the major leagues.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Very good. So if they're in the minor leagues, that means that they're most likely on their way up, and that they're heading for that second spot, which, as you said, is not necessarily, in skill level. Major leagues may be higher than minor leagues, but everyone together is still a professional athlete. So,
yeah, a lot things have changed a lot. Like I think we used to have like 10 levels of minor league uh, baseball, like starting from rookie levels down in the we have a Latin American academies in Venezuela and Dominican Republic, and then we had like 2 rookie leagues in the United States, a short season single A team, and two single A long seasons, double A, triple A. So that's a lot of teams that that's what people don't understand. There's so many levels of minor leagues, which actually, unfortunately, after last year, they reduced the levels. So they reduced a lot of those short season rookie teams. So there's going to be less minor league players now, or minor league teams. But anyways, I started at AAA back in 2007 because Tampa Bay at the time hired. It was the first year they had strength coaches on all their minor league levels.
mm,
So I was a little older, so they figured I could possibly handle the AAA guys more. But
gotcha.
when you have AAA players, you have a lot of players that have been in the major leagues or on the verge of going to the major leagues. And the best I can describe AAA as is it's a reserve for the big leagues. In other words, when someone gets hurt in the big leagues, a guy in AAA is ready to move up. So,
Mm,
yeah.
okay, that
And
makes
then
sense.
your lower levels are more player development. That's where it's not all about so much about winning. It's more about developing players and improving their skills.
And that meaning that lower level, as in it's below AAA level.
Yeah. I mean, like your rookie balls, your single A, double A. If you made it to double A, you've really accomplished something as a baseball player. Double A has a lot of good players, and a lot of those players have been in Triple A. Or when a player's been around for a long time, sometimes they can become a free agent. So
Mm,
there's such a need for players because players are always getting hurt, and you need players with experience. So Double A, you get a lot of players who are capable and ready to go, and that's like I said, someone once told me that if you made it to Double A in professional baseball, then you've accomplished something.
wow. And then I assume that means that Class A is like your top of the line, high level, right?
Single A.
Single A.
Well, Triple A is your highest level.
Oh, got you. All
Yeah,
right.
so you go. Yeah, sorry. Triple A would be before the big leagues, and you get your Double A, and then below that you have Single A. And Single A it's a little complicated because you can have what's called short season Single A. You can have what they call advanced Single A, and just Single A. So it's kind of complicated. Unless you follow minor league baseball, it's really hard to really maybe grasp, I guess.
Mm, I
Um,
got you.
and it changes a lot too. Like I said, last year MLB axed a bunch of minor league teams. So and especially with COVID, that's gonna change everything because a lot of players didn't get any playing time last year because of COVID. So it's going to be interesting how they can try to get back into the game.
Absolutely. Yeah. COVID has done a number on a lot of people in a lot of different ways for sure, but I'm sure athletes kind of deal with it the most.
Right.
So we'll definitely see how that changes going on in the future. I want to take it back real quick to the CSCS. You mentioned that there was a certification exam or the certification that you needed to get after the 4-year degree. Do you recall what specifically from the exam that you took translated directly over to your job? Like what are some things that you studied and took the test for, and then right away you were able to apply them?
Well, one thing is a lot of the tests that they had in there were applicable to like some of the performance tests, like a 300-yard shuttle, some of those things that they do it a lot in sports, and especially proper techniques like squatting. They really break down things like squat, how to spot, look what the things to look for, and of course your energy systems, like how it applies to sport and the demands of the sport.
Very important stuff.
Yeah. So one thing about the NSCA, they try to really be an expert in every sport, which is sometimes it's funny. Like you can read a lot, but until you actually work in the field, then you realize, what you learn on your own or outside of in the sport doesn't really make sense until you're actually working in baseball, and then you can pick or how to apply it. Yeah, because you really have to use a lot of discernment. That's really what comes down to when you're as a strength and conditioning coach, as to what's applicable for your team.
So it fortifies your toolbox. It gives you the knowledge, gives you what to do, how to do when it comes to programming, when it comes to training, and then you're saying that experience is the best teacher, basically, right?
Well, yeah. Think of it as like, say you go to you get a professional degree in something, and that's just the starting point, and then you have to continue with your education, continuing education units to keep your skills sharp, and there's lots of ways you can do that: attending conferences, reading articles, and that's actually required of you to maintain your certification. It's not like a one-time thing where you pass it and then you never have to do anything else ever again. They do every three years. You're up for renewal.
So. Got you. I'm coming up for my personal trainer one pretty soon. I've had it for almost 2 years, so it's every 2 years recertify.
Right.
Can you talk to me about things that you were able to see from the weight room, from the turf, directly transfer over to the field when working with your athletes?
From the weight room?
Yeah, like what? I assume you went and you were with the team, watching the games, right, while they were playing on the. So, was there anything in particular that you noticed, like, whether it was how the athlete, their running technique, their sprinting technique for longer distances, how that improved after focusing on that kind of stuff together in the weight room?
That's a good question. I mean, it's funny. A lot of times that's a process that develops, I would say, more outside the weight room if you're talking about running skills. And a big part of our day is doing like a dynamic warm-up, and during that dynamic warm-up we would incorporate a lot of drills, coordination drills that help develop the movement skills necessary to play on the field. So yeah, that's when I say dynamic warm-up, I think anybody that's in strength and conditioning knows what that means. It's usually
like basically like a jumping jack or high knees, like that's a type of movement, but they would get more specific, right?
Yeah, like we do like these things called striders, which are not an all-out sprint but faster than a jog. We do high knee runs, power skips, side shuffles, karaoke, backward run, all kinds of drills like with A skips, B skips, things like that, marching drills, stuff like that. If you do it, it becomes repetitive, and sometimes players, they get kind of tired of it because we're doing the same things a lot, but that's how they really reinforce the movement skill, is by doing it repetitively. And anybody that has tried those will know what I mean, because it's just like anything, you're learning a skill. And the only way to really do that is to be specific and do it. And those drills, that preps the body to do more activities. Then we'll do some like running mechanic drills after that with our position players. And usually those are like short sprints, 20s, 30s, 40s. And we do some things called build-ups, where every like 20 yards, you build up your speed and go out maybe 60 yards or 80 yards. And that's just necessary to develop their conditioning, but also to prevent them from, pulling hamstrings or things like that.
That's important, because injuries are severely detrimental to athletes and can, their career. That's big time goes on hold,
Yeah, I mean, getting back to the weight room, we like to focus a lot on, the what we call the absolutes. When I say absolutes, like working your lower body, try to work your lower body functionally: squats, deadlifts, lunges, things like step ups, upper body, do some pulls, do some pushes, get some something with a rotational component in it, maybe some plyometric stuff. But we try to keep it as functional as possible, because we want the athlete to be able to move. And so sometimes when I was taking players to the gym, when we were on the road, we'd go to these, just public gyms, and players they'd see all these machines, and they love doing machines. For some reason, everybody loves machines, but I would try to get them away from that as much as I could. There's no reason why somebody should be doing leg extensions, those thigh machines and whatnot. It's kind of funny.
I have my own, like, whenever I get a question about machines in the gym, whenever someone asks me about machines, I say they're great for isolating muscles. For example, your leg extension, you want to work on isolating that quad muscle so you can build up the size, pump some blood in there, then that's fine. But if you want to increase your total body strength, anyone knows that you can get so much stronger doing exercises on your feet, freely moving, free motion, versus, sitting in the chair.
That's what we try to tell people. And there's a term that was kind of getting thrown around like 20 years ago called sport specific training. And that's kind of a misnomer of a term, because honestly, sport specific would to me can mean like as close to the sport as you can get. So some sports exercises you do in the gym are maybe a little more specific than others. Like squatting might be more beneficial to NFL or American football lineman or something versus, say, a pitcher. But it's still a good exercise to do. So yeah, sport specific it's kind of a misnomer, but of a term. It's kind of a general term, but the closer you can get to like functional, meaning like on your feet, using your whole body versus not sitting down or on a machine, the closer you're going to get to being what's called sport specific.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%, man. And that people like us, that's what we're here to enforce and facilitate. So can you tell me about anything involving your experience with the CSCS, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, that you didn't enjoy? Anything, maybe in your job working with the Rays, was there a part of it that was not your favorite?
Oh, being a strength and conditioning coach?
Yeah.
Like what I didn't enjoy?
If anything. If not, then great.
Well, I guess initially it was a little bit of I thought I was going to be doing a lot more on a day during my day, but what I found out I was doing, we had long days, but we weren't working a lot. Meaning, because when you do a little bit in the morning, and then you have some downtime, then you do a little bit more in the afternoon, then you get some downtime, then you're playing the games, and then you might be working out after a game. Say it's in spring training, but I had to get used to being there all the time. And strength and conditioning was not the only, part of the piece of the daily pie, if you will.
Mm.
Everyone wants a piece of that pie. So, you know, there's batting practice, there's infield practice, there's base running, and then you have your games. So, yeah, that's why. And initially, there was a lot of turnover of strength coaches because it's long days. Spring training is every day. There's no days off. I remember I asked a dumb question like, "Do we have the weekend off?" And they told me, "No, every day's like a Monday here."
You'll sleep when you're dead. No.
Basically, yeah. So, and the spring training games weren't very exciting. They're just like there's really no fans. It's just kind of like exhibition games. I'm not saying it wasn't good, but it wasn't the same until the actual season started, where you're playing in front of a crowd and you're playing in a stadium, and the games really mean something. In spring training, it's not about, like, a lot of times we didn't even know who won sometimes, just because it's just about players getting innings, pitchers getting their innings, hitters getting their at bats and things like that. Just getting them ready. So.
You mentioned different roles, different people that are responsible for working with these athletes. Specifically, you talked about batting or infield, base running, which sounds like sport-specific things, like that term that you used for baseball. Can you tell me about other important clinicians or people who had roles working with the athletes? I'm specifically interested about the mental skills coach. Do you know anything about the mental skills coach?
Yeah, actually, I think mental skills coaches started coming into the game, or at least in our organization was five years ago. They started hiring. Actually, it was more than 5 years ago. I think 5 years ago we started getting more in the minor league levels, but in the major leagues they've always had a mental skills coach, and those guys usually try to work one-on-one, get to know the players a little bit, and find out what's going to maybe they can help them overcome something. And because a lot of players, they're just like you and I. They have issues that, even though they're professional, they can perform at a high level, and usually they were the best in their high school or college, and but they're playing against other people who are as good or better than them, and it's a hard game. So sometimes just having somebody to talk to that isn't, say, your manager, hitting coach, pitching coach, you can maybe open up to a little more. That's where the mental skills coach comes in handy.
So like a sports therapist kind of thing.
Yeah, and we even had like a team psychologist, but that's entirely different. That's someone that's not so much mental skills, but more of the, licensed clinical psychologist that can, answer questions and give them the right resources if they need medications or things like that. So.
Great. Thank you so much for that. How about athletic trainer? How often did you collaborate with an athletic trainer, or did you talk to one at all while you were working with athletes?
Oh, the athletic trainer is someone you work with a lot, pretty much one-on-one. You have to get along with your athletic trainer for sure, because that's one thing I learned right away. And actually, that they even asked me that in the interview, like, if you were, the athletic trainer told you not to do something, would you like listen to him, or? And that was a key, because the athletic trainer really is responsible for, keeping these guys healthy, and they have generally a lot more experience in dealing with, injuries and whatnot, and it's part of their, their practice. So as a strength and conditioning coach, you have to respect that, and so you learn quickly to actually work with the athletic trainer. And actually, I've often had to assist them when the athletic trainer can't be in two places at once. Like sometimes, like during a game, the athletic trainer has to stay in the dugout and watch the game, but a pitcher comes out of the game and he's got to go do some arm care or shoulder care. So I'll take the pitcher into the clubhouse and I'll do some exercises that helps with the recovery of their shoulder, elbow, rotated cuff stuff, do some core exercises and maybe a little bit of conditioning. So what's one thing I definitely, you work probably the most with your athletic trainer, and it's good to communicate with the athletic trainer, because then they ask you, like, how is this guy working in the gym? Does he, how is he? And vice versa. Like sometimes if some players, if they're not cooperative with you, they're probably not cooperating with the athletic trainer also. So you share information and it helps with just everybody being on the same page.
That's cool. I like how there's a partnership and, a little bit more of a understanding that there needs to exist between the two parties there. It's almost like the, supervising therapist and the physical therapy assistant in that setting. So,
right. Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah. You have to work together, and otherwise, you're just going to have, it's going to make for a troubling season.
not going to help that. Yeah. Not going to help that client or that patient to, to get to where they need to be. In your training, in your programming, can you remember methods or exercises that you used back in the early days, 2006, 2007, that if you looked at them now, or you looked at training athletes now, those ways would be obsolete, or things that they wouldn't do anymore?
Not really. I mean, people think it's funny you say like 2006, 2007. I remember, no, it's funny you say that, because I remember in 2013, I had a player who's kind of been around for a while. I was in AAA, and he was kind of complaining about our training manuals. Like, that you've had the same training manual since 2006. A lot has changed since 2006. So I told my boss that, and he kind of laughed, like, yeah, a lot has changed. Like my boss would show me stuff from like the early 1900s that people were doing, like, glute ham bridges and hip thrust, barbell thrust. They were doing a lot of that stuff. A lot of people think stuff changes, but sometimes things go in cycles and they come back. So I remember med ball started coming back into use, like, I don't know, last 20 years. And everybody thought that was like new stuff too. But med balls, there's pictures of Babe Ruth, with a med ball, or, so
that's cool.
Yeah. So I can't really say anything is obsolete. Honestly, people try to get more specific in everything they do, but I don't know. I mean, sometimes people get away. What I've seen happen more is people get away from the basics more, like running, for example, because a lot of athletes go to facilities, indoor facilities in the off season where they have limited space. They might have 30 or 40 yards of turf to run on, so they just do short distance sprints. Yet when we have them come onto the field, we make them do maybe pitchers like 100 yards, 150 yards, 200 yards, and they're like, well, I don't need to do that because I never run that in the game. But you still need to, what we call like the overload principle, and so it's like you just can't do the same thing all the time. So, but yeah, what I've seen is actually a trend where people are doing less running because of the facilities they go to in some of these places, because they don't offer more space to run, then they think you don't need it. So
it's hard sometimes, like, exactly, like the space factor. I have athletes doing like 10-yard drills and stuff, like in the small amount of space that we have in the Hampshire Hills Athletic Club indoor tennis court that we've repurposed into the gym. So I could definitely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not bad if that's all you have. I mean, that's great. But I think, yeah, when an athlete is, going back, to their actual, field of play, they can't, obviously they need to be able to start running more, because like we've had a lot of athletes who have come in out of shape because someone told them they didn't need to run much, but if that's all you have is, yeah, you can work on those things, but yeah, and it's hard, especially like our athletes that were in the wintertime, like if you're like in like Minnesota somewhere and it's so cold and you just can't get out and run, then we tell them maybe do some treadmill sprints or something, that's better than nothing. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Can you tell me if you wanted to train with any other sport or any other sports team as a strength and conditioning specialist besides the Tampa Bay Rays, who would you be? What would be your second choice?
Baseball?
Sure. Yeah, we'll do baseball, and then I want you to tell me what other sport. So
okay.
First, what baseball team would be your second choice working for? And the second question is, which sport would you want to be a strength and conditioning specialist for?
It's funny, when I started working in with Tampa Bay, your perspective changes. You don't really start looking at teams as, I'd really want to play. I really want to work for them. Like I'd like to work for the Yankees or the Red Sox because everybody likes the Yankees and Red Sox. Sometimes you look at organizations that maybe develop their players, put a lot into player development. I know teams like the Yankees and Red Sox have a lot of money, so they can go out and buy free agents. So sometimes working for your smaller market teams like Tampa Bay, they need to develop players more. So maybe as far as job satisfaction, you would, maybe some team that was a small market, you may have better opportunities there to train athletes more. But that's not really the case. So it'd be hard for me to really answer that question. I think, honestly, there's 30 major league teams, and 15 of them have their spring training sites in Florida, and the other 15 are in Arizona. So if I've always been in Florida, I think I'd like to go maybe spend some time out in Arizona. So like some teams out there, like the San Diego Padres or Los Angeles Dodgers, San Francisco the Giants. There's a lot of teams out there, Arizona Diamondbacks, that maybe that would be maybe a next move for me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then what about sport? If there was another sport besides baseball to work conditioning athletes for?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, honestly, I think I'd like to train soccer players.
Yeah.
I know, like, because they work hard, and I know they also have a lot of injuries, like lower extremity injuries, knee injuries. I'd like to really work with soccer players, especially working on their lower body strengthening, so that maybe they could prevent some of those injuries. When I was in college, I did some. When I was in PT school, I did like a lot of research articles on preventing ACL injuries, non-contact ACL injuries, and why they occurred, and soccer had a high prevalence of ACL injuries, especially in female soccer players. But there weren't like a whole lot of studies done as to prevent those injuries. But I know, like in soccer, it's just because there's all the conditioning and the cutting they do, they're more prone to some knee injuries. So I think soccer players would be a challenge to work with, and I think they would, because they're hard workers, they would be open to training and especially if it could help them prevent some injuries. I think they would be good to work with.
Yeah, it's hard. It's probably hard to find a lazy soccer player. So you can definitely put them through. All my soccer players out there know, they'll put in the work when you give them something to do.
Yeah. Usually they're eager. Sometimes, they probably, a lot of times soccer players, you have to actually probably rein them in because they're probably doing too much work, like too much running or something. They need to, but that's where you come in and you can get them to do the things that maybe they don't know they need to do, or things that might help them. And so that's really what comes down to, like, as a strength and conditioning coach, is you have to make those decisions that are going to benefit the athlete, and not just trying to, copycat a program that's, say geared towards soccer players. Maybe you need to really look what they're doing and what they're not doing, and then try to, add something to it, to that program.
So, we don't have to say names, but can you think of any particular situation where a athlete or player didn't, wasn't compliant with what you had planned for them, and they were kind of causing, like, they didn't want to do one thing in particular, and either they, hurt themselves because of it, or something like that, where it didn't necessarily go the way that you had intended for them?
Oh yeah, I won't mention any names, but I always think of this one player who, back in 2013, he was new to the organization. A lot of eyes were on him, and he did not want to work out at all. He's one of those guys that was so talented that it was hard for like hitting coaches or even outfield coaches to even work with him. Sometimes they'd come into town like, I wasted my time because he doesn't listen to me. So he didn't really listen to me either. So like we would do reports twice a month, and I had to fill out a report. How many gym days we went, and how many times this person attended the gym, and then I'd have to rank them on how well they worked or whatever, and then I have to maybe write up a little summary on each player. Well, this one player had 0 workouts.
Wow.
So for like April, the first half of April, and that raised a lot of red flags. I mean, I got phone calls like coordinators and the farm directors like, oh, we can't have this. This guy's, he's probably going to be going to major leagues this year. So my boss, the coordinator, comes into town, and we sit down with this player and come up with a plan for him to do, basically a workout every 4-game stand or whatever. And I just basically did some basic pulling exercise, lower body exercises, pressing exercises, something with rotation like med ball throws, and then I also had to get him to warm up. He was the type of guy that wouldn't even do a dynamic warm up. He would lay on the ground and stretch his hamstrings out. Meanwhile, everybody else around him is doing all these, sprints and high knees and dynamic stuff, and they get themselves loose, and they're seeing this guy just stretching. I said, look, you're gonna like pull a hamstring or something. So then he'd go and do some running. He was really hard to work with, but he made it up to the big leagues that year. So,
well, good for him. Like, honestly, if he was successful, then that is what it is. But he didn't get injured or anything like that.
No, well, the thing is, the guy was like really strong, and he would throw a med ball at me and almost knock me over. And he had a really strong. He was just naturally strong guy. That he even would joke like, no, he's a world-class athlete, call himself a world-class athlete, which he was. But those guys, a lot of those guys can get by and just on their pure talent, but as they get older, they can get hurt very easily. I've seen guys with really good physiques, chiseled abs, and but they don't work out very hard, and then they have they get over age 25 or 28 years old, and they have a collision with another player in the outfield or something, and they're on the DL for like 2 or 3 months. Whereas there was a guy that might have been in better shape, he'd get up and walk away from it. I mean, think of like your NFL players; those guys are in good shape. They fall down all the time, and yet they get back up, and but sometimes like a baseball player, he has a collision, he's really hurt. A lot of times it's, they may be great athletes, but that's where the, working out, that's what people don't realize is it's not always about getting stronger. It's just making your body more resilient, and being able to, just to take the daily grind of playing and maybe, falling and colliding and things like that.
I really like that. That's a good way to kind of sum up a lot of the things that we talked about here today. I have one final question for you before we wrap it up. So I want to thank you. We talked a lot about the role of the strength and conditioning specialist when it comes to training professional athletes. And I want to end it with kind of like a hypothetical type of question. If there was in existence, right, a license, some kind of license, some kind of 7-year, it could be, physical therapy, for example, is a doctorate degree, right? So this field could be a doctorate degree, could be a master's degree, but essentially something that combines the physical presence, a clinical presence of a physical therapist when it comes to movement and injury rehabilitation, combined with the performance, power development, all of the strength and conditioning coaches, like those two things coming together in one giant, profession, or one kind of. How do you feel that would change, like, the sports industry, the healthcare system, fitness industry? Does that make sense? Do you have any
Actually, yeah,
thoughts?
what you just said makes a lot of sense, and the stuff I've thought about that a lot. Like when I actually interviewed at Springfield College, I was, one of my questions was, do you get any like clinical experience? Would you be able to work maybe like maybe a clinic with, say physical therapy? And the answer to that was pretty much no, not really, because it doesn't gear you, it's more geared to training athletes. And that's why my boss at the time was trying to get me to go in the direction of physical therapy. But one thing I learned about when I was in physical therapy is that, when you're working in some of these clinics and you're working with patients, you don't get to spend a whole lot of time with the patients. And most of those people that are coming in, they don't work out. They don't exercise on a regular basis. So they get hurt fairly easily. And a lot of times, they have back problems, and because they have weak cores and they're just in bad shape. And I'm thinking, man, this person just needs a general fitness program just to get in shape. And I often thought I could do way more as like a personal trainer just in the gym with this person than I could in a clinic, working with them for like 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then give them a home exercise program. But
Exactly.
unfortunately, this system doesn't work that way, and I understand why it doesn't. But I mean, but I think a lot of times personal trainers and strength and conditioning coaches are undervalued.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if there were some way of having some kind of license, I know they talk about a lot about that, but like I said, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. I know I think there was some teams, like major league teams, had a strength and conditioning coach that was also a physical therapist, because sometimes some people they like training athletes so much that they'd rather do this, strength and conditioning than just say working in a clinic, working with patients. And some of the people I went to school with, even after they finished and started working in the field, kind of envied me because I got to do the more fun stuff and they were mostly doing paperwork, which you'll find, like if you're going in for a PT assistant, you're doing more of the hands-on, and the physical therapist is more just doing a lot of paperwork and maybe sees the patients, once every 3 or 4 weeks. I don't know, but you know what I mean.
Exactly. PT will be doing a lot of the documentation. I'll definitely be
Yeah,
doing a ton of
exactly,
documentation too. But
exactly.
all right. Well, thank you. I learned a lot in this conversation, and it's nice to actually get an inside look. It reminds me of like career day when I was younger. It just gives me an inside look of actually someone who has worked in the field that I want to go into. So thank you very much for your time today.
All right, Greg, you're
And
welcome. It was actually quite enjoyable. I like having these chats. It kind of forces me to, stay up on things, and in case I have an interview, at least I'll be a little more prepared to answer these questions.
yeah, man, best of luck to you. That's, do the work, put in the work to get where you need to be. And I know that you'll thrive in whatever situation you end up in.
All right, Greg.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's good talking to you.
Thank you. We'll be signing off. Have a wonderful night.
All
All
righty.
right.
Bye.